Artificial meat for dogs. Good or bad? Well, that depends on how much we trust the producers. And if they start calling it Soylent Green, I'd avoid it if I were you. I'm Graniopteryx. So I saw this here and I thought that it would be a nice subject I could really get my teeth into. Oh, by the way, I do beg you to excuse the jumper. It's almost Christmas. You'll just have to suffer through that. OK, so this is the article. British dogs to be fed the first 100% lab-grown meat. British dogs are set to be served the world's first 100% lab-grown meat for dinner, or anything else come to that. Retailer Pets at Home is working with startup Meatly, what a name, to introduce the first cultivated meat food for pets, which will hit shelves next year. Let's see. The company promises to offer pets sustainable, tasty and nutritious meat. Nothing wrong with it, of course, which does not come from an animal. So that's all you people who don't like feeding your dog meat. Well, you've got something. The cultivated meat is initially created from cells taken from a fertilized chicken egg. Well, that cuts out the vegans anyway, which are fed with a cocktail of vitamins and proteins in a container similar to those used for making yogurt or beer. The lab-grown substance can then be used to make pet food. Meatly hopes to expand its meat to the US and Canada market within the next 2 years. And they say any product adheres to vegan ethics, but if they're using a fertilised egg, then it doesn't. So there's something a bit wrong with that just to start with. Apparently, they're not the first people. A Czech company called Bene Meat Technologies, they became the first company to be licensed to produce and sell lab-grown meat for pet food earlier this year. They say all ingredients going into the culturing process are commonly used natural foodstuffs, so cultured meat will be really safe to eat. Yeah. So somebody from, they call them an animal expert, but they call anyone an expert if they ask them to talk to the paper. Anna Webb, host of podcast A Dog's Life, said it was unclear if the lab-grown meat would have the same nutritional value as meat from animals. Oh, that's a load of nonsense. I mean, they feed most tinned dog food. It contains a lot of soya, for instance, which dogs were never intended to eat. And I used to have a dog who... She wolfed it down all right when she got it and then threw it up on the kitchen floor about half an hour later. So obviously that disagreed with her. You're making fake meat, which doesn't sit right with me. Yeah, there's definitely something creepy about it, but let's face it, a horse turns grass. My horse turns grass into 600 kilograms of mean muscle. You know, what's the difference, really? Right, so let's just talk about this, because there are a few issues that you might discuss around this subject. Like everything else in life, the prospect of growing meat in a lab would have its good and its bad side. And first of all, let's just talk about the good side. We don't have to kill other animals to get a lot of good, healthy protein. As for my own preferences with regard to meat, I've never liked the idea of eating it. It's not that I object to the actual eating of the stuff. It's just that I can't bear the thought of how they die, transporting them in overcrowded trucks and then herding them into abattoirs where they know there's something horrible coming for them. And actually, you know, for instance, I'll eat venison because even a domesticated deer can't be taken to an abattoir. You've got to go out into the field and just stand next to it and shoot it. If it doesn't know what's coming, I reckon that's a pretty good way to go, if you're a deer. So from that point of view, the idea of artificially produced meat sounds good. The other bonus is that probably, and again, we still don't know that much about it yet, but probably factory-produced meat won't contain the sort of medications or the actual diseases that are the lot of live food animals. Again, so far it's all theoretical, and we'll have to see about that. But we don't like to think about some things, and some of those things are the antibiotics, the antifungals, the hormones, and often anti-stress medication that go into the animals that we actually do eat. And all of that happens because we're producing them in such crowded conditions and in such huge quantities. And there are other things. For instance, we catch diseases from farm animals. Sometimes we're talking about diseases we can't cure in ourselves when we get them because the animals have already been treated with the same medications and the bugs have become resistant. Farm animals do cause a great deal of pollution. Just living, and the more so, the more intensive the farming is. So, right, that's the good sides. What are the bad sides? Well, let's face it, they may be feeding it to dogs now, but it won't be long before we'll be eating it as well. And I'm interrupting myself here to remind you to click like, to subscribe and to share. And if you're on YouTube, remember to click the notification bell. All the links to my other channels are in the description, including links to donation sites. I'm always grateful for donations, of course, but just clicking like is the best thing you can do for this video and my channel generally. And I'm reminding you that the Christmas 2023 competition is now open. The link to the video telling you all about it is also in the description. But it won't be long before we'll be eating it as well. And there will be problems associated with that, some of which can be got over fairly easily with planning, and others that are insurmountable. But planning is the word. Governments don't really do planning, do they now? So the first disadvantage, and it's something we really have to think about, is that if we can produce meat in factories, there'll be no need to keep beef cows in the field. And that means a lot more killing. Yeah, a lot more cows will die a lot sooner because of that. You see, let's take bovines, for example. If we're still drinking milk, then we'll have to keep the female cows, and as soon as a bullock is born, it has to be got rid of, as there's no point in rearing it for food. And so we'll be killing the bullocks. I did say bullocks. And finally, as we kill more and more of them, of different breeds, we'll end up with a much restricted variety of animal. There are breeds that will die out. Any breed that doesn't have cows that produce a reasonable amount of milk. I don't think Aberdeen Anguses are huge milk producers, so they'll just die out. And this will cut the diversity of the animals in our countryside. And here I'm talking about real diversity, not the fake stuff that woke politicians and company executives talk about. So, unless someone plans for this loss of diversity, like frozen ova and sperm that we can keep in the bank, we could end up at some future date with a livestock pool very narrow and very susceptible to one particular disease. And if you want to know what I'm talking about there, well, it happened in China a few years ago with the swine flu epidemic. They were all the same breed of swine, and they died like flies. The other thing involves more the transition period, I suppose. When we kill cows for food, there's plenty on the cow that you can't even put into sausages, and they can put a lot of rubbish into sausages. But that's the stuff they usually put into pet food. If you're not using it for pet food, like you're feeding dogs the artificial meat, then it has to go somewhere else. And there is as much as 45% wastage on any animal you kill. And getting rid of that wastage is quite a problem. It can be made into fertiliser, of course, but the treatment to do that costs money, and slaughterhouses, even today, and especially in third world countries, often end up cheating in their disposal practices. And again, if we don't plan ahead for alternative treatment for the offal and the other detritus, then we're going to be knee-deep in some serious environmental issues. I'm very much afraid that what will happen instead is that all the detritus is going to be shipped off to third world countries for them to deal with, where it will create mayhem. Or, even worse, it'll be dumped at sea to poison the dolphins with antibiotics and hormones. Again, this is a problem that can be solved, but only with forward planning. Now, who among you trusts that our governments will do that forward planning? There are no votes to be got by a politician saying, I have a plan for the disposal of offal in 10 years' time. Yeah, would that be a vote winner, you think? Hands up, anyone? No, thought not. Then, of course, the another downside is the jobs problem. A lot of agricultural workers are going to be agricultural non-workers, aren't they? And then there's the unmentionable thing. As I said, they're giving it to dogs now, but it won't take long for the stuff to be fed to humans, will it? Depending on how cheaply it can be produced, of course. And when we become dependent on the factories to provide us with meat, who's to say they'll use that power well? And if they stop producing for any reason, either by being sabotaged in some way or some practice that's causing, a disease or an infection to go around, they have to be closed down. Or if they just feel a bit awkward, well, it's not as if we can say, OK, we'll go back to the farms and start eating meat again, because it won't be there, will it? Again, planning. Yeah, can you rely on that? Mind you, I found a Spectator article here which might interest you. Here it is. What's wrong with eating dog? It's about a very special meal the author had in Korea. Perhaps in such a situation, losing our artificial meat production, we might have to cut out the middleman and decide that when we order a hot dog, that'd be exactly what we're asking for. However, I shall finish with looking at the positive side. Think of it this way. All those insufferable vegetarians you have to take a menu from before you can give them dinner, well, you might say they'll have nothing to beef about. Couldn't resist that. OK, till next time. Why not treat yourself or a favoured relative or friend to these magnificent examples of merch? The mugs and t-shirts come in the Graniopteryx design or Granbo with a firearm or the more deadly knitting needles. Go to www.graniopteryx.com and whatever platform you're watching this on, please click like, subscribe and share.